Disney. Just hearing that name lights up childhood memories. Mickey's cheerful whistle, fairy tale castles sparkling in the night, fireworks exploding above Main Street, USA, for millions of Americans. Disney isn't just a company, it's a cultural heartbeat. Families book trips years in advance to Orlando. Kids dress up as their favorite princesses every Halloween, and generations have cried over the first 10 minutes of Up. Disney is marketed as the safest, most wholesome entertainment empire on Earth. But what if I told you behind the glitter, the magic, and the smiling mice, there are some truly shocking truths. Facts so wild, so bizarre, and sometimes so disturbing that they might forever change the way you see Disney. Buckle up. Because this isn't the Disney bedtime story you grew up with. This is the side Disney would rather you never talk about. Let us dive in with a shocking story that proves kids will do anything to imitate their Disney heroes even if it lands them in the hospital. Number 1. The Princess and the Frog sent over 50 kids to the hospital back in 2009. Disney released The Princess and the Frog, introducing us to Tiana, the hardworking waitress in New Orleans who dreams of owning her own restaurant. The movie was a hit, bright jazz music, colorful bayou scenery, and of course, that unforgettable scene where Tiana kisses a frog that turns into a prince. Cute, right? Magical even? But in the real world, some kids took that scene a little too seriously. Across the United States, reports began surfacing of children literally picking up frogs and kissing them. Why? Because if Tiana could land herself a prince, why couldn't they? The problem is, real frogs don't carry fairy tale spells, they carry bacteria, specifically salmonella. And no, that's not just some mild tummy ache. We're talking serious food poisoning. Fever, stomach cramps, vomiting, diarrhea. It hit dozens of families with more than 50 kids getting sick after puckering up with slimy amphibians. The CDC even issued a warning to parents reminding them, kissing frogs is not recommended. You think? Now imagine being one of those parents. You rent the DVD, sit down with your 6-year-old daughter who's mesmerized by Princess Tiana, and the next morning, you catch her in the backyard, lips pressed against a squirming toad she found under the deck. By evening, she's in the ER with an IV in her arm. Oh, that's not exactly the happily ever after Disney promised. And here's where it gets darker. This was into even the first time kids copied dangerous Disney behavior. Psychologists in the US have long noted the power of media role models, especially when kids are still learning to distinguish fantasy from reality. Superhero movies inspire kids to jump off furniture pretending to fly. Pirates of the Caribbean triggered a wave of kids sword fighting with broomsticks. But The Princess and the Frog crossed into a much more dangerous zone because unlike flying or sword fighting, kissing a frog was actually possible. Kids could act it out perfectly and the consequences were real. It's a bizarre reminder that even something as innocent as a Disney princess kiss can spiral into an actual health crisis. So next time you see those glossy-eyed cartoon characters, lean in for a magical smooch. Just remember, in the real world, it's less true love's kiss and more call poison control. But the weirdness doesn't stop there. If Disney can accidentally send kids to the hospital, what about the more hidden messages woven into the films themselves? You've probably heard rumors, maybe even paused your VHS tapes as a kid, squinting at the screen trying to confirm it. Well, let's talk about the most infamous Disney controversy of all time. Fact number 2. The sex in the sky scandal of The Lion King entangled. When The Lion King roared into theaters in 1994, it became an instant classic. Sweeping Savannah shots, Mufasa's booming wisdom, and Elton John's soundtrack, it all cemented Simba's story into American pop culture. But there's one scene fans still can't stop talking about. In the film, Simba collapses on a cliff, depressed after losing his father. Dust rises into the night sky, forming a cloud above him. But when you pause the movie at just the right moment, the dust appears to spell out a word. Not hope. Not love. Not Disney. No, it spells out sex. Clear as day. At least that's what millions of fans claim. Others argue it actually spells SFX, a cheeky nod to the special effects team who animated the movie. But here's where it gets harder to defend. The same words seem to appear again years later. In 2010, when Disney released promotional posters for Tangled, eagle-eyed fans spotted the word sex hidden in Rapunzel's golden locks. 2 separate movies, 2 different decades. Same mysterious word? Coincidence? Or something more intentional? For parents in the US during the VHS era, this was no small thing. Picture a suburban mom in 1995. She rents The Lion King from Blockbuster, her kids are sprawled on the carpet in footy pajamas. And suddenly another parent whispers at the PTA meeting, "Did you hear about the hidden message in Simba's dust cloud?" Before long, parents everywhere were rewinding their tapes, pausing, zooming in, and gasping. Overnight, Disney, supposedly the most family-friendly brand in the world, was being accused of sneaking subliminal sex messages into films marketed to children. Now, whether or not it was intentional, the damage was done. Entire articles popped up in the New York Times and USA Today, debating whether Disney animators were secretly slipping in adult jokes. Religious groups used it as proof of moral corruption in Hollywood. And let's be honest, if you're a kid who stumbled across this scene, it forever changed the way you looked at Disney. Some argue this was just animators pulling harmless pranks. After all, animators are artists and late-night shifts can get punchy. But others believe it was more sinister. Subliminal messages designed to keep adult audiences entertained while kids watched blissfully unaware. The truth, only the animators know. But what's undeniable is that Disney, the company famous for dreams coming true, ended up with headlines screaming "SEX" in The Lion King. That's not exactly the brand image they wanted to sell. And here's the kicker. Despite all the outrage, Disney films with alleged hidden messages still sell millions of copies. The scandal became part of the legend, almost adding to Disney's mystique. Because let's face it, when something's labeled forbidden, audiences can't resist hunting for it. VHS tapes got paused, DVDs got slowed frame by frame, YouTube channels racked up views pointing out dirty Disney moments. It became a national treasure hunt, but instead of gold, people were chasing pixelated dust clouds and Easter eggs in princess hair. So whether you believe it spells SEX, SFX, or just some random letters floating in the air, one thing is undeniable. Disney isn't as squeaky clean as they want you to believe. Behind the castles and fireworks, there's always something a little darker, a little stranger, lurking in the background. Fact number 3. Sleeping Beauty barely appears in her own movie in 1959. Disney released Sleeping Beauty, a story based on the centuries-old fairy tale about a young princess cursed to fall into a deep sleep until awakened by true love's kiss. Aurora, also known as Briar Rose, is the star of the show, or at least she's supposed to be. But here's the shocking truth. She is on screen for a grand total of only 18 minutes. That's right. Out of a movie that runs 76 minutes long, the princess herself appears for less than a quarter of the film. Even more shocking, she only has 18 spoken lines. 18. That's fewer words than most Americans say while ordering a coffee at Starbucks. So how did Disney get away with selling an entire movie around a character who is barely in it? The answer lies in the way the story was structured. Focus isn't really Aurora at all, it's the fairies. Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather, her magical guardians, drive most of the plot. They hide her away, they raise her, they battle Maleficent, and ultimately, they're the ones who set up the entire climax. Aurora spends most of her screen time unconscious, waiting for someone else to solve her problems. This fact has become a running joke in America. Parents who rewatch the film with their kids often say things like, "Wait, didn't we buy this movie for Sleeping Beauty? Why is she missing?" Critics have called her the least developed princess in the entire Disney lineup. Compare that to someone like Mona, who's on screen almost the entire film, actively shaping her destiny. Or even Elsa from Frozen, whose anthem Let It Go became a cultural phenomenon. Aurora, by contrast, sings once, takes a nap, and lets everyone else do the heavy lifting. And yet, somehow, Aurora became one of the most iconic Disney princesses. Walk into any Disney theme park in America, and you'll see little girls in sparkling pink dresses twirling around, embodying her. She's on merchandise, lunchboxes, and even floats in parades. It proves the incredible power of branding. Disney didn't need her to actually do much on screen. They needed the idea of her, the image of the perfect, dreamy princess. But this fact also sparked debates in American culture. Feminists in the 1970s and beyond pointed to Aurora as the ultimate example of a passive female character. Look, they said, here's a princess who doesn't even control her own story. She literally sleeps through her movie. It was a reflection of the times when women were expected to wait quietly and beautifully until someone else came along to rescue them. Aurora's lack of screen time wasn't just an accident. It was a product of the storytelling values of the 1950s. Still, when you put the numbers side by side, it's mind-blowing. Imagine watching a sports game where the star player only gets 18 minutes on the field, or going to a concert where your favorite band plays for 18 minutes, and the rest of the night is filler acts. Most Americans would demand a refund, but in Disney's case, audiences embraced it, and the movie went on to become a classic. Now let's move from the sleepy past to a colorful, balloon-filled fantasy that seems whimsical at first glance, but when you crunch the numbers, turns into one of the most shocking realities in Disney's entire history. Fact number 4. Up would require 9.4 million helium balloons to work if you've ever seen. Pan, let's be honest if you haven't. You're missing one of the most heart-wrenching openings in film history. I'll never forget the sight of Carl's little house floating away carried by thousands of helium balloons. It's the image Disney plastered all over trailers and posters. A perfect symbol of freedom, its adventure, and refusing to let go of dreams. Kids in America were mesmerized. Adults wept. And somewhere deep inside, everyone thought, what if that could really happen? Well, here's the truth. Scientists, engineers, and even physics professors across the U.S. sat down to calculate it. And the verdict? Carl would need not thousands, but 9.4 million helium balloons to lift a standard wooden house off the ground. 9.4 million. To put that into perspective, that's enough balloons to cover multiple football fields. If you tried to order that many from Party City, you'd shut down the helium supply for the entire country. Let's do some American-style math here. Single helium-filled balloon can lift about 14 grams, roughly the weight of a pencil. And a typical small house in the U.S. weighs somewhere around 100,000 pounds. Not even counting furniture, pipes, and personal belongings. To offset that weight, you'd need millions of balloons, not the few thousand Carl tied to his chimney. And let's not forget logistics. Balloons pop. They deflate. They tangle. Imagine Carl trying to inflate 9.4 million balloons in his backyard. Even if he had a professional helium tank, filling one balloon takes about 10 seconds. Multiply that by 9.4 million, and you're looking at almost 3 years of non-stop inflating. And Carl, let's face it, is an elderly widower. He doesn't have that kind of stamina. He probably would have died before Ellie's house even left the ground. But that's the magic of Disney. They take the impossible and make it feel real. Still, when Americans learned the actual science behind the scene, it sparked endless discussions. Teachers used it in physics classes. College students made YouTube videos testing miniature versions. Mythbusters even ran an episode analyzing balloon power. The conclusion was always the same. Inspiring, yes. Realistic, not a chance. Here's the fascinating part, though. Despite the impossible math, the scene resonated deeply with audiences. Why? Because it wasn't really about the physics, it was about the dream. Americans in particular love stories of chasing freedom, breaking boundaries, and saying to hell with the rules. Carl's balloons represented the childlike wonder inside all of us, the part that still wants to believe you can escape your troubles by simply tying balloons to your house and drifting into the sky. But imagine if it did happen. Think about American suburbs. Rows of neatly kept lawns in places like Ohio, Texas, or California. One morning, you look out the window, and instead of your neighbor mowing his lawn, you see his entire house rising into the air, carried by balloons. Cars stop. Kids scream. Someone live streams it on TikTok. Within minutes, it's all over the news. Local man takes flight in balloon-powered house. The FAA scrambles to redirect airplanes. It would cause absolute chaos. And yet, that absurdity is exactly why it remains one of Disney's most beloved films. The sheer impossibility makes it magical. But knowing the math that it would take 9.4 million balloons adds a whole new layer of shock. It reminds you that Disney operates on its own rules, where the laws of physics bend to the power of imagination. Still, if Carl had tried it in the real world, the only thing going up would have been the emergency room bills. Fact number 5. Men with beards were once banned from Disneyland. Beards have always been a symbol. In American culture, they can signal rugged masculinity, rebellion, or creativity. From Abraham Lincoln's iconic chin curtain to the hipster beards that took over Brooklyn coffee shops, facial hair has its own history. But for Walt Disney, beards symbolize something else entirely: untrustworthiness. When Disneyland first opened in 1955 in Anaheim, California, Walt Disney wanted it to be spotless, not just in terms of cleanliness, but in image. He wanted guests to step into a fairy tale world, far removed from the roughness of reality. And part of that vision included banning any man with a beard or mustache from entering the park. Yes, you heard that right. For decades, if you were a man with facial hair, you couldn't buy a ticket to Disneyland. The rule was strict, and it applied to everyone, including employees. Walt himself wore a mustache, but he made sure that cast members the term Disney uses for employees were completely clean-shaven. His reasoning? He believed beards made people look scruffy, or even sinister. He wanted every worker, from ride operators to janitors, to look wholesome and trustworthy, like the boy next door. Imagine being a dad in the 1960s, finally saving up enough money to take your family to Disneyland, only to be turned away at the gate because you had a beard. It sounds absurd today, but it was real. In fact, this rule lasted until the 1970s for guests and until 2004 employees. That means if you worked at Disneyland in the 90s and had a beard, you had to shave it off every single day. Only in the 21st century did Disney finally relax the policy. Now here's where it gets even stranger. Beards are everywhere in American culture now. Think of Disney fans. In modern times, lots of dads sporting full beards, families taking selfies at the Magic Kingdom, guys wearing best day ever t-shirts with long facial hair flowing. Today it looks totally normal. But for decades, Disney parks were a beard-free zone, a kind of alternate universe where every man looked like he'd just stepped out of a 1950s advertisement. The irony. Walt himself never shaved his own mustache. In fact, his pencil-thin upper lip hair became iconic, instantly recognizable in portraits and photographs. So Walt enforced a no-beard policy across his empire while flaunting his own. It's one of those contradictions that makes Disney history so shocking. Some cultural critics see this rule as part of a bigger pattern: Disney's obsession with control. Every detail, no matter how small, was dictated from the top. Whether it was the length of a skirt on a female cast member, the type of smile required when greeting guests, or the ban on facial hair, Disney wanted his parks to reflect a specific image of America: clean, cheerful, and safe. But in doing so, he erased the individuality of the people inside it. To this day, some longtime Disney employees joke about the beard ban as one of the strangest workplace rules they ever experienced. It's hard to believe that the man who built an empire on imagination enforced such rigid conformity. Yet that's the paradox of Disney. Behind the magic, there's always an iron fist, making sure the dream stays spotless. Now let us take a look at another shocking fact that reveals just how massive Disney's vision really was. Because if you think Disneyland in California is impressive, wait until you hear about the Florida project that redefined the meaning of theme park. Fact number 6. Disney World is the same size as San Francisco. Americans love to think big. We have the biggest highways, the tallest skyscrapers, the most massive stadiums. But Disney World in Orlando, Florida, takes big to a whole new level, spread over 25,000 acres. Walt Disney World Resort is so huge, it's literally the same size as the entire city of San Francisco. Let that sink in. A single theme park complex is equal in size to one of America's most famous cities. Most people who visit Disney World only see a fraction of it. They hop between the 4 main parks: Magic Kingdom, Epcot, Hollywood Studios, and Animal Kingdom, and maybe stay at one of the hotels. But the reality is mind-blowing. Disney World is essentially its own city. It has its own transportation system with buses, boats, and even a monorail. It has its own fire department, security, and utility systems. In fact, the Reedy Creek Improvement District gave Disney the power to function almost like its own government until Florida. Lawmakers recently moved to strip some of those powers. So how big is 25,000 acres really? Let's put it in American terms. Manhattan, the heart of New York City, covers about 13,000 acres. That means Disney World is nearly twice the size of Manhattan. It's so large that if you tried to sleep in every single hotel room on Disney property without repeating they'd have to stay there for 68 years. That's an entire lifetime just to work through the resorts.
Boys.
For families visiting from across the U.S., the sheer size of Disney World can be overwhelming. Parents often joke that they need a vacation after their Disney vacation, because walking through the parks racks up more miles than a marathon. Fitbit trackers have recorded guests walking 10, 12, even 15 miles a day just trying to cover ground. Disney is so massive that shuttle buses run constantly just to move people from one section to another. But here is the shocking part. All of this land was secretly purchased by Walt Disney himself in the 1960s, using fake company names. Disney quietly bought up acres of Florida swampland to avoid price hikes. Locals had no idea what was happening until suddenly, the biggest entertainment empire in the world announced it was building something bigger than Disneyland. When it opened in 1971, people were stunned not just by the rides but by the scale. This wasn't just a theme park, it was a kingdom. For many Americans, Disney World has become a rite of passage. Families save for years, pack into minivans, and make the pilgrimage to Orlando. But few realize they're stepping into a place the size of an entire U.S. city. It's one of those facts that sounds exaggerated until you see it on a map. A cartoon castle competing with the Golden Gate Bridge in terms of landmass? Only Disney could pull that off. And here's where it gets even wilder. Disney hasn't even used all the land. To this day, huge portions of the property remain undeveloped, sitting as conservation land or future expansion zones. That means Disney World could, if it wanted, grow even larger, perhaps outpacing other American cities entirely. Imagine a theme park complex bigger than Miami. At Disney, it's not impossible. So next time you step through those gates, remember, you're not just entering a park, you're stepping into a world the size of San Francisco, built from scratch, fueled by imagination, and run with the precision of a small government. Fact number 7. The Pirates of the Caribbean ride used real human skeletons when you board Pirates of the Caribbean at Disneyland. You expect fake cannons, animatronic buccaneers, and maybe the faint smell of salt water pumped through the air. What you probably don't expect is to be surrounded by actual dead bodies. But that's exactly what happened when the ride first opened in 1967. Back then, Disney's Imagineers were masters of detail. But the fake skeleton technology of the 1960s just wasn't cutting it. They tried plaster molds, wooden frames, even painted props, but every version looked phony, like Halloween decorations you'd buy at a discount store. Walt Disney himself hated it. He wanted realism. So he approved something almost unthinkable. They went to UCLA's medical school and obtained real human skeletons. That's right. The bones you saw in early versions of Pirates of the Caribbean warranty plastic. They were from real people who had donated their bodies to science. Disney Imagineers dressed them up, mounted them in pirate poses, and set them against flickering lanterns and treasure chests. When guests rode the attraction, they had no idea that the skulls and rib cages staring back at them were once living humans. Now pause for a moment and imagine being a kid in the late 60s. Riding with your family, staring wide-eyed at the skeleton captain slumped over the wheel of his ship. You scream, thinking it's just a ride prop. Meanwhile, your parents sit beside you, completely unaware that they've just paid good money to look at an actual corpse. That's Disney magic equal parts fantasy and nightmare. As the years went on, word of the skeletons leaked out. Cast members whispered about it. Urban legends spread through Southern California. Finally, as fake skeletons improved, Disney quietly replaced most of the real ones. But here's the kicker. Many Disney fans believe some of the real bones were never removed. In fact, if you visit Disneyland today and look at the skull above the bed in the treasure chamber, some die-hard Disney insiders swear it's still real. This fact unsettles so many Americans because it blurs the line between entertainment and mortality. Disney parks are supposed to be controlled dreamscapes, yet hidden among the animatronics was a reminder of real death. Families who later discovered the truth often felt betrayed, like they had unknowingly become part of some macabre science experiment. And yet this secret also became part of Disney lore. To this day, ghost hunters, vloggers, curious tourists ride Pirates of the Caribbean hoping to spot the last real bones. So next time you're in line for the ride, take a moment to wonder, are those grinning skulls really fake? Or is someone from centuries past still staring at you from behind glassy eye sockets? Fact number 8. If Finding Nemo were real, Nemo would have turned into a girl and mated with his dad. Now let us shift from skeletons in theme parks to one of Disney Pixar's most beloved films. Finding Nemo melted hearts worldwide when it came out in 2003. The story of a worried clownfish father searching the ocean for his lost son struck deep chords with American audiences. Parents cried, kids fell in love with Dory, and Nemo became one of Disney's most marketable characters. But here's the shocking truth. If the movie had followed actual marine biology, the story would have turned into something very different. And very uncomfortable. Clownfish have one of the strangest reproductive systems in the ocean. They live in groups with a strict hierarchy. The largest fish is the female. The second largest is the breeding male, and the rest are non-breeding males. When the female dies, something astonishing happens. The dominant male changes sex and becomes the new female. Then another male steps up to become her mate. So let's apply this to Finding Nemo. At the start of the movie, Nemo's mother is killed by a barracuda, leaving Marlin, his father, as the only parent. In real biology, Marlin wouldn't have stayed a worried single dad. He would have transitioned into a female. That means Nemo's father would have become Nemo's mother, and Nemo, as the next male in line, would have become her mate. Let that sink in. The heartwarming father-son journey we all watched in theaters would, in real life, have turned into a story about Nemo mating with his own parent. Instead of being a family-friendly adventure, it would have been something so bizarre and disturbing that no child could watch it. American audiences were stunned when marine biologists started pointing this out after the film's release. Articles appeared in National Geographic. Professors mentioned it in oceanography classes. And suddenly, parents everywhere had awkward questions to answer. Imagine your kid tugging on your sleeve at the aquarium saying, "If Nemo's mom died, does that mean his dad is his mom now?" Try explaining that in a G-rated way. But here's the thing. Disney and Pixar knew what they were doing. They simplified the science to make the story work. They didn't want biology, they wanted emotion. And in America, where family dynamics and traditional roles are such powerful storytelling tools, the dad searching for his son plot was irresistible. Played to every parent's nightmare. Losing a child? Still, knowing the truth makes rewatching Finding Nemo a completely different experience. Every time Marlin frets over Nemo, you can't help but think, biologically, this character should already be turning into a female. Every time Nemo dreams of independence, you remember he's destined, scientifically speaking, to become his parent's mate. It's creepy, it's shocking, and it's real science. And yet, that's the paradox of Disney magic again. They take something grounded in reality and reshape it into something emotionally universal. If they had followed clownfish biology to the letter, the film would have been an oceanic horror story. Instead, they crafted one of the most beloved family movies of all time. Still, it's a reminder that Disney's bright, colorful worlds sometimes hide truths that are stranger and far more unsettling than fiction. Fact number 9. Disney recalled 3.4 million VHS tapes of The Rescuers because of nudity in 1977. Disney released The Rescuers, a sweet little story about two mice, Bernard and Bianca, who set out to rescue an orphan girl from a greedy villain. It wasn't one of Disney's biggest blockbusters, but it became a classic for families and was re-released multiple times. By the late 1990s, VHS copies of The Rescuers were flying off the shelves in America. Parents built home video libraries for their kids. But in January 1999, Disney made a shocking announcement. They were recalling 3.4 million VHS tapes of The Rescuers. Why? Because someone had slipped in 2 frames so fast you could barely see them of a topless woman. Not a drawing, not animation. A real photograph of a nude woman in the background of a city window. It was only visible for a split second as Bernard and Bianca flew past in a sardine can airplane. But in the age of VHS, when people could pause and rewind, eagle-eyed viewers spotted it. Suddenly, America erupted in disbelief. Parents who had trusted Disney to provide wholesome entertainment were furious. Late-night talk shows joked about it. Newspapers ran headlines like Disney's dirty frame. Disney, terrified of losing their reputation as the family brand, scrambled to pull millions of tapes off the market. Think about the logistics for a moment. Disney had to contact retailers across the U.S., from Walmart to Blockbuster, demanding unsold tapes be removed. Families who already owned the VHS suddenly realized they were holding a collector's item. Some Americans even hoarded their copies, knowing recalled versions might skyrocket in value. Sure enough, years later, original tapes with the nude frames sold online for hundreds of dollars. The big mystery, though, is how it got there in the first place. Was it a disgruntled animator pulling a prank? Was it sabotage? Disney never gave a clear answer. All they admitted was that the frames were not placed there by the filmmakers, which only fueled more conspiracy theories. For parents, this fact shattered the illusion that Disney films were bulletproof safe zones. The idea that a movie about heroic mice could hide adult imagery was almost too much to process. It made moms and dads across the U.S. second-guess every Disney tape on their shelf, wondering what else is hidden in there. And yet, the scandal only cemented The Rescuers as a cult classic. To this day, people pause YouTube clips trying to spot the infamous window. It's one of those jaw-dropping Disney moments that reminds us, even in the House of Mouse, nothing is ever as squeaky clean as it seems. Fact number 10. Disney movies are full of penises. It feels almost ridiculous to say out loud, but here it is. For decades, audiences have spotted what appear to be hidden penises in Disney films. Yes, the company that built its empire on talking mice and fairy tale castles has a long-running history of questionable imagery slipped into its animations. Let's start with the most infamous example, The Little Mermaid, 1989. Look closely at the original VHS cover art, and you'll see it. One of the towers in King Triton's underwater castle looks exactly like a giant golden penis. The resemblance is so obvious that once people saw it, they couldn't unsee it. Parents were outraged, stores reported complaints, and Disney eventually altered the artwork in later releases. The legend of the penis castle lives on. Then there's the wedding scene in the same movie. As Ariel prepares to marry Prince Eric, the officiating priest appears to, well, become a little too excited. His robe shows a suspicious bulge that some viewers swear is an erection. Disney tried to explain it away as just his knee, but the damage was done. The VHS era made sure every American kid who owned the tape could pause and laugh at the awkward moment. But it doesn't stop there. Across Disney films, eagle-eyed viewers claim to have spotted phallic shapes hidden in backgrounds. From Bugs Bunny gags to Mickey Mouse drawings to castle architecture. Whether they're intentional jokes from bored animators or just coincidences, the sheer number of reports makes it one of Disney's most infamous scandals. Why does this matter? Because Disney is supposed to be America's most family-friendly brand. Parents put their kids in front of these movies, trusting that nothing inappropriate will slip through. So when stories about penis imagery in Disney films spread, it felt like a betrayal. Moms swapped horror stories at PTA meetings. Preachers used it in sermons as evidence of moral decay. And kids, of course, giggled uncontrollably whenever they found one. Some scholars even argue that these hidden images reflect a rebellious streak among Disney animators. Long hours, tight deadlines, and corporate censorship may have driven artists to sneak in jokes as a way to fight back. After all, most kids wouldn't notice. Only bored adults pressing pause on VHS tapes late at night would catch them. Whatever the truth, this final shocking fact proves something important. Disney, the global icon of childhood innocence, is also the source of some of the strangest adult controversies in pop culture history. The company that gave us Mickey Mouse also gave us skeleton rides, fish mating scandals, and castles that looked like giant genitalia. And maybe that's why Disney continues to fascinate Americans. It's not just the fairy tales, it's the contradictions. Behind the magic, there's always something darker, stranger, and far more human. So there you have it, the 10 most shocking facts about Disney. From kids kissing frogs and winding up in the hospital, to skeletons that were once real people, to VHS tapes hiding nude photos, Disney's history is full of secrets you were never supposed to see. For every magical moment, there's a bizarre backstory. And that's what makes Disney such a cultural powerhouse. It's not just about happily ever afters. It's about the strange, the controversial, and the things that make us gasp, laugh, or shake our heads in disbelief. If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button and share it with your friends who grew up on Disney movies, because trust me, they need to know these facts. Subscribe to our channel for more jaw-dropping top 10 lists, and drop a comment below telling us which Disney fact shocked you the most. Was it the real skeletons? The clownfish biology? Or the, well, castle towers? Whatever it was, one thing's for sure. You'll never look at Disney the same way again.